Freedom Radio Hour. Live on Capital Radio 91.6 FM.
All right, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Freedom Radio Hour. I'm your host, DJ Adam Cruz, and I'm sitting here next to my fantastic co-partner right here.
Eddie Nicholas, what up, beautiful people. And what a wonderful segue, because we're going to deviate from our usual format of the Freedom Radio Hour. We'll talk about music news from around the world. Today, we're going to talk about you, Mr. Adam Cruz. And when I mean talk about you, Mr. Cruz is now a newly published author.
Yes.
With Free the Music Business, Tips and Tales from an Indie Music Nerd. Now, you know, when I first heard this title, you know, when we think about nerds, you think about people with the glasses, and they have a propensity to be
the Steve
driven,
Urkel types.
and the Steve Urkel types and all of that type of stuff, but that is far from you.
Yeah.
You know, just from me knowing you, how did you come up with this title? And first of all, the inspiration for even wanting to do a book.
So I think this kind of came out. Well, first of all, thank you so much for
You're welcome.
that beautiful intro. So the book is entitled Free the Music Business, Tips and Tales from an Indie Music Nerd. And I use that word nerd lovingly because I guess I am trying to break a little bit of the stigma around being really into a particular topic. But I hold that title proudly because I think I definitely went into the realm of nerddom by, being obsessive around topics around the music business news. And so the book is really a culmination of the experience of researching topics for our show here, but also like really just trying to figure it out. I wanted to figure out, if you're an artist, how are you getting paid or not? Who pays you? How long it takes for you to get paid? How much do they pay you? And then when we turn into the digital music era, streaming era, it really started to get me down this path of inquiry, really trying to figure out why things happen the way they do in terms of the music business. So I really juxtaposed what was happening with a professional story around running an old disco label named West End Records.
So when we talk about this book, it's about a accumulation of the many stories that you've covered on the Freedom Radio Hour.
Yeah, basically.
And then again, when we look at the book, you have 11 chapters in this book.
Well, the number 11 is very important to me. If anybody's been following any of my music, I did a song called 1111.
Yes.
Because I noticed the times when I felt really creative or very focused, I would turn to the clock and it would say 1111, AM or PM. And so the number 11 is played a role in my life somehow, so I was paying homage to that by having 11 chapters.
Now, we start with chapter 1.
Yep.
New York to New Jersey.
Yes.
What's going on there?
So basically, West End Records, at the time that I worked there, its offices were located in Chelsea on 17th Street and 6th Avenue, and I'm based in New Jersey, and so I would take the PATH train, a couple of trains in and out of New York City every day. So that chapter is really describing the first days of becoming the A&R and production director at West End Records and what it was like commuting from New Jersey to New York, and how it was there was a lot happening both professionally with this new job as well as personally. A lot.
And and for those of you, A&R stands for Artist and Repertoire.
Yes.
So
I was charged with usually that's one job and then another person handles production. But when you're at the turn of the millennium, which is where the story begins, those jobs started to be overlapped in some ways. So I was in charge of the sound, what we signed, as well as the production schedule. So it was quite a job.
And what I find so crazy when I look at this book, you talk about the disco era. You were a mere child.
Yeah. And it's so funny you say that. You know what? You make a great point, because when I was starting to work at West End, I got a call from an irate fan who was really offended at the notion that we were about to put out West End digitally, meaning that you could buy MP3s of it on iTunes or whatever. This person was very upset because he was a purist, and he thought that I was sullying the name of West End by even offering a digital version of these classics. But we were in an era where we had a Manhattan office, salaries to consider, 2 different locations, basically, new nightclub ventures we were starting, So we had a lot of costs, so we had to make money somehow.
And and again, when we talk about this book, I could see some of it being very autobiographical because again, you talk about Mel Sharon, and if I'm not mistaken, he was an integral part. I know for me, growing up with the Paradise Garage and all these other clubs, that he was fundamental in backing. That relationship.
Yeah, so Mel Sharon, for those that don't know, is known as the godfather of disco. He really gained prominence working in production for ABC Paramount Records. So he was behind the scenes working in the departments that handled the Ray Charles, the country music album that went several times platinum, Aretha Franklin's albums, a bunch of others. So Mel was really behind the scenes at that time. And he would do things like establish great relationship with retail stores around his region. He would dress their windows at their stores to make it enticing to buy ABC Paramount music. So Mel really was always a music person. In the summer of 1976, he decided to start his own label with a partner, Ed Cushins. That label was West End Records. So you can imagine the gay liberation movement was happening really a stone's throw away from where he lived. The Stonewall riots happened right there. And Mel was a pioneer in raising awareness for what they were calling the gay cancer at that time, which is what we know as the HIV/AIDS epidemic. But really, Mel was at the beginning and at the epicenter of a lot of different things. So starting West End Records was really a no-brainer when you consider his story. So my time with him was very uplifting, very rewarding, but also emotional. I did watch him deteriorate in less than a year's time. And so when you watch somebody that you become really close with die like that, it really changes your perspective. And then when you think about what was happening in the music business, it was a lot of change. So it seemed parallel at the time.
You know what? We're going to come right back. We'll be back in about another second or so. Eddie Nicholas, Adam Cruz, Freedom Radio Hour, 91.6 FM, DWildmusicradio.com. Be right back.
All right.
Freedom Radio Hour. Live on Capital Radio 91.6 FM.
What up, beautiful people? This is Eddie Nicholas, and welcome back to the Freedom Radio Hour. I'm here with my wonderful co-host, Mr. Adam Cruz, but I'm not going to let him do too much talking today until I interview him, because we're here to talk about his new book, Free the Music Business, Tips and Tales from an Indie Music Nerd. Now, if you were with us in our first segment, we were talking about all types of information in regard to him coming up with the title and his experience with Mr. Mel Sharon. And speaking of that experience, you have a chapter in your book, Life After Death. I don't know if that has much to do with Mel Sharon, but
yeah, so Mel, like I said in the last segment, is known as the godfather of disco, but he was also a gay activist, really trying to bring a lot of attention to HIV and AIDS, especially when the Reagan administration in the 80s were dismissing it and completely ignoring any sort of research or support for what to do about it. So Mel, when you fast forward time, he applied that same sort of staunchness for his life, but he really did a lot to bring attention to safe sex habits, how to check your health, how to help one another, those kinds of things. But in 2006, Mel announced that he, in fact, contracted HIV and then he had full-blown AIDS.
And by that time, he was a full senior citizen.
He was already a senior citizen. He admitted to a tryst with an escort. And so when he did that, he felt very embarrassed about losing sort of the meaning behind maintaining safe sex, and sort of that started me pondering around what happens when seniors and their sex lives when they get older. They start to loosen their own values around sex and protection, because you figured, I've sort of lived through it all. You know, he buried more than 300 of his friends following the deaths of so many from AIDS. So it seems so shocking that he himself would contract it as a senior, but he did. And so for the next year, I basically watched him deteriorate to the point that I was visiting him in hospice care, and he just didn't talk, didn't know anybody, was already in a vegetative state.
So, in other words, some of this is autobiographical, you know, in the nature with the people that you met and how you came about wanting to do this book and the culmination of the experiences that you've had. You talk about change.
Yeah, I just feel like that
change.
at that time, I feel like with Mel Sharon's passing, there was also a bit of a death of the music business that also was happening. And what I mean by that is the notions around our traditional methods for putting music out. We had this idea that units sold meant one, right? So if you were a platinum selling artist, that meant 1 million records sold. Well, in the streaming era, all of those ideas are switched upside down. So the death of Mel really was parallel to the death of the traditional methods of doing the music business that I was learning at the time. So that's kind of what's happening in the book, is the personal stuff and how parallel it was to what was happening in the wider business world.
So, when I look at you, I'm gonna throw you up in there. You're one of the millennials, but I love I love my millennials.
I am not a millennial.
Apps for everything.
Yes, but that doesn't make me a millennial. I'm 42, so there's no way I'm a millennial.
Altruism on its ass.
Yes, that basically is a chapter all about Tidal and the idea that Jay-Z, rap mogul who bought Tidal, really was...
So Tidal, the
streaming service.
The streaming service, okay.
Yeah, so Jay-Z bought Tidal from a Norwegian outfit named
Yes, we
Sparrow.
covered that
And
on Freedom Radio.
Yeah,
yes.
we've covered it many times. And the story in that chapter is all about Jay-Z really championing sharing a stake in a company. He was out for the independent artist. He was being altruistic, that sense of being selfless. He got a whole bunch of artists to sign on to the service. He really bragged about the exclusivity model, high-end streaming. And his idea was to pay artists a bigger percentage of the royalty, as well as a stake in their company. And so that's the altruism piece of it. But when I say altruism on its ass, it's the story that actually unfolded. He might have started that way, but what Jay-Z ended up doing was really falling to the trappings of corporatism, which is really afflicted.
Money.
Yeah, money. That afflicted all of the other streaming outfits, because for a long time, Tidal was the only one that was run by an artist. The rest are run by corporations. So by what I mean by altruism on its ass is Jay-Z's attempt at using his selflessness to elevate the platform that is streaming, but end up falling flat because he too decided to pursue the corporate model.
The corporate route, exactly. Fake news and fumbles.
Yes.
Especially because we have an administration here
Yes.
that is all about fake news.
And they popularized the term fake news.
Fake news, yes.
Yeah, so I talk about fake news and fumbles because that's really a chapter about what artists do to really get ahead in terms of getting attention for their products.
Okay.
One of them was the story around U2. You remember when they released their Songs of Innocence album? They gave it out for free, and they gave it out to everybody who had an iTunes account. So one morning you woke up and you had the entire album for free from U2, except there was a big problem. One, it felt violating that somebody took up space on your computer or your device without your say-so. Number two, what if you weren't actually a fan of U2 and you just had this sort of forced on you? The third thing was that there was started to be rumors that you couldn't actually delete the album if you chose. You couldn't actually fully delete it because it was free. It was actually forced upon the user.
So it was imprinted into your...
Yeah, so it was left on your desktop. So for all of us, I know for me, I don't know about you, but I often deal with space issues on my phone.
Yes, we all do.
Or I have to back up, or I have to import or export, or whatever you got to do to clear up space. So having a YouTube album really was taking up a lot of room. So that talks about that. I talk about Rihanna's Anti album, who out of nowhere became this platinum selling thing, which was, when you look at the real math, it wasn't quite so. So fake news and album fumbles really speaks to what artists are trying to do to get ahead. And the ideas of million selling albums, cold selling albums are really, they don't mean anything anymore because of the way the math is tabulated these days. So that's what that's about.
And I know one of the things that you and I have always discussed on the Freedom Radio Hour is the issue of how people are paid. Yeah. And I know you do cover in this chapter, you talk about myths, monies, and mergers. And I know we talked about so many mergers on the Freedom Radio Hour in regard to these mega companies, merging together and all of that. How does that play into the writings of this book?
Yeah, it's exactly that, the money flow of it all. We start to think that first of all, we really allowed these streaming companies to become popular because we thought that we wanted things easy. And the companies took that and took full advantage of ease of use. That's a fancy way of saying because we wanted everything on a phone or device, or because they were designing it for us, we allowed certain things to fall to the wayside. What do we mean? Things like the privacy information you share to have access to certain apps. All of the space around your information that you keep is all accessed here, but it's also accessed by corporations and what they do to really get your attention. So what you're seeing now over time is companies merging and consolidating their power so that they can get more of your attention, more of the dollars from your subscription, and they can target to you more clearly.
The top word is your money.
Yes.
You know, not so much they want your money.
Yep.
My goodness. I mean, you cover so many things.
Yep.
Art goes public.
Art goes public is a wonderful topic. It really speaks to a three-part argument that I'm making. Let's take a break. When I come back, I'll talk all about that argument and what I'm trying to convey with Free the Music Business, my brand new book, Tips and Tales from an Indie Music Nerd.
91.6 FM, the Heartbeat of Sudan, D-Wild Music Radio, the Freedom Radio Hour. Right.
Freedom Radio Hour.
What up, beautiful people, and welcome back to another episode of 91.6 FM, the Heartbeat of Sudan, D-Wild Music Radio, and the Freedom Radio Hour. I'm here with my co-host, Mr. Adam Cruz, and we're discussing his book, Free the Music Business, Tips and Tales from an Indie Music Nerd.
Out today.
Yes. And December 21st, we're going to be holding our book signing? Is that correct? Yes.
It's actually the day before, so the 20th, Thursday the 20th.
Okay.
Yes, at the Newark Public Library. For any of those that are following us on social media, know that we have quite a partnership with the Newark Public Library. So shout out to them. And what we're doing is hosting a reception.
No, you're hosting a reception.
Yes.
I'm hosting. You are hosting a reception.
Yes. I'm
hosting.
But
wait a minute.
Yep.
Before we even get to that part of it, you know, with the culmination of all of this, what is it that you want people to walk away with? Is there any, sometimes when people write books, we may write books for entertainment, but do you want people to walk away at least knowing a little more of the music business? I want them to know a chronology
of what happened in streaming music, how it started, how it become popular. And I also wanted to talk about that Art Goes Public chapter, one of the last chapters, if not the last chapter. What I'm talking about there is a three-part argument, because I feel like on this show, Freedom Radio Hour, we talk about art going public. What we mean is, remember we talked about how Spotify became this privately owned company. They're now a publicly traded company, and then you could own shares in Spotify. But Spotify is really pushing music. That's their platform. So what I'm arguing is that what we're experiencing, not just with the Spotify story, but with others like it, is art has become publicly traded on the stock market. And I argue that's actually a version of gentrification. It's a gentrification of art on Wall Street. I also talk about what I think is the gentrification of art on Main Street. And what happens, or at least in the States,
USA,
we're having issues where our public spaces are either being bought up by developers in the name of gentrification.
Preach.
Or in the name of safety. They're awful things. You remember in California, there was a ghost ship fire. This was a multi-use space, performance space in California that unfortunately had a terrible fire and many people died. And so it caused the Oakland area to close down, not just that for obvious reasons, but to close down other spaces around that area under the auspices of safety. But when you do that and you don't replace those spaces, those communities become devoid of art. So what I'm arguing there is that we're experiencing a gentrification of art on Main Street as well. So Wall Street, Main Street. The last one is really talking about the idea that what we're experiencing is so I said Wall Street, Main Street, and on the internet. The internet has become this place that you access music for free. There's an idea that it's free music placed behind a veneer of public access, but actually this is all corporations playing a role in getting your private information, getting your subscription dollar, actually owning and being able to exploit the content you upload, because you think I made it so I own it, and actually you've given permission for these corporations to make money for the use of your videos. They'll use it in marketing, advertising. You'll see your picture somewhere and you'll have no say-so around that, nor will you make any money from them using your name or
because
likeness.
of where you placed it.
And you could agree with those terms and conditions are real. So I talk about those three parts: gentrification of art on Main Street, Wall Street, and on the internet.
Wow. This man is so literate and knowledgeable. I say that all the time on the Freedom Radio Hour. So
that's what I want them to take away. I want them to take away that the music is being devalued that you enjoy. If you want to enjoy more music, there's nothing wrong with that, except you have to realize that
it costs.
It costs. It might cost you your $10 a month, but do you realize that we're making a fraction of a penny per stream?
And often we don't even see that.
And yes, and we don't even know what that really means. In the book, I really spell out what those fractions mean, because you want to know how much each one is really paying, and so I spell it out because I want people to know, you don't have any idea. You're just enjoying this song over and over, but you have to play it, or someone has to play it thousands of times in order to make any money. And that's not even a livable wage. It's only a little check. It's a few dollars. And then we're talking about how music is at the epicenter of all of our culture. It's part of our humanity, yet you're not paying the artists.
It's in the background of our lives.
But you're not paying them appropriately. You think you are through these services. It's not your fault, consumer. You're being targeted and marketed to. That ease of use and everything in a mobile life is what you need. So you buy into that, but it comes at a cost.
And talking about a cost.
Yes.
Where can we get your book?
Yeah, so you can get it everywhere. So thank you for a beautiful segue. So 4 versions of it is available. What do I mean? You can get the physical book. You can get the Kindle version for those that are Kindle users. You could also listen. There's an audio book. And there's also a soundtrack. So all of those things are available now on Amazon, Audible, iTunes. Of course, if you want to patronize our store at mixtapesessions.com, the audiobook and the soundtrack is available there. But yeah, Amazon, pick up the physical book.
And and this is one of the things that Adam and I constantly talk about, the windowing effect.
Yes.
And what he just explained is evidence of what we call windowing.
Yep, and you can pick up the book to understand what windowing is. I talk about windowing, I talk about pairing, I talk about our own experiences with our releases and what we're trying to do to just bring attention to it. So if you don't mind, take a moment and read this book. I think it'll be an eye-opener. And if you do read it, I thank you, and leave a review on the Amazon page. We have one already there. Thank you, Leslie, our first reader. So we have our book release party. Books will be available there, but by the time you see this episode, the party hopefully have already happened.
And we'll share pictures, of course.
Yep, and we'll be talking more about Free the Music Business, the new book, and also what will happen in the future, because I really want to take this book and use it, as you said, to
and that actually was going to be my next question.
Yeah.
Well, do we see another book coming, or
yeah, I'm already working on an outline for the second book. And it really took me quite a bit of time. It took me about 2 years off and on to really do it. I'm a dad of 3 little ones. I record music, do these shows, and amongst a bunch of other things. So it took me a while.
And it's everybody music. Let me say something. This man is an artist, label owner. He creates and does stuff for the community, working with the aftercare program in the state of New Jersey, and a wonderful friend. And now he adds literary author to his plate. So you do a lot. And I just want to say I'm extremely proud.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for asking me to write the foreword.
Thank you for writing.
It was an extreme honor.
Yep.
Make sure that you go and you pick up this book.
Yes.
And of course, follow us on our Freedom Radio.
It's $20.
Show.
It's $20. I meant to say $20.
$20.
Now, I have to give a very, very special shout out to 2 people. Amanda Frontani, who edited this book. She did a magnificent job. And
thank you, Amanda.
Yes, and our fantastic book cover designer, Jose Gonzalez.
Thank you, Jose.
If you want to take on something like a book, I think it's so important that you write a lot, that you find a really good editor.
Yes.
And that you find a really great book designer, because I think that Jose did a wonderful job between the front and the back as well. I wanted to give a gritty feel that the music store was closed now, because now we're dealing in a whole different space. That's streaming. It has nothing to do with this music store here anymore. So I thought this would be compelling, and I think he did a fabulous job. Amanda really took the time to she edited my words without making me lose my voice, which is what I was
Which is very important.
I was scared that I'd lose my voice, but she really helped me to maintain it and just get those words out there clearly. So thank you, Amanda. Thank you, Jose. Thank you, Eddie. Thank you, DWAP Music Radio, our Capital Radio 91.6 FM family.
Yes,
they have their copies already. So shout out to all of our beautiful listeners in Sudan, Nigeria, all around Africa. This is just the beginning. 2019 will be big for both Eddie and I. We're taking it by storm, and we're starting with a literary discussion around what's going on with the music business, called Free the Music Business.
Make sure you pick it up. Again, Free the Music Business, tips and tales from an indie music nerd.
Yes.
And I guess this nerd is Adam Cruz.
Yeah, but I say it lovingly, because I'm trying to change that stigma around nerd, but I definitely, you go one way to try to figure something out, and then you go down that rabbit hole. I think it's safe to call yourself a nerd about that particular topic. Mine happens to be the music game.
The music game.
I'm trying to figure it out, you know?
So, you know what? Till next time,
yeah,
we're going to be out of here. 91.6 FM, the Heartbeat of Sudan, DY Music Radio, and the freedomradiohour.com. Any closing words, Adam?
Thank you so much for just being here with me, being my best buddy, giving a fabulous interview today, and definitely just being with me every step of the way. Thank you to my family, my beautiful sister Flora, Josh Milan, Deuce Martinez, all of our digital partners. We just have a lot of good things coming in 2019. Stay tuned.
Stay tuned. Peace and love.
Peace.